Welcome to the ATP Project. You're with your host, Matt, Steve, Jeff, Elizma. How you guys going?
Good, thanks.
Good. No, after the third try. No, I'm just kidding. Guys, obviously with everything that's going on around immunity at the moment, the Herbs as Heroes podcast that we've been doing, we believe in nature. We believe that nature's got a lot of answers that can help in today's modern world.
A lot of cool tricks.
Really cool. And some really great science behind it as well too. So reishi. Now, reishi ganoderma, it's a mushroom. Any other names for it that people call it?
Yeah.
No, it starts with L.
Well,
What do you say?
Lindsay!
well, what is it called? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking of more like traditional names, like,
Yeah.
it was called a mushroom of immortality,
Wow.
10,000-year mushroom,
Whoa.
mushroom of spiritual potency, and the spirit plant. So
Wow. Well, there you go. I mean, obviously, reishi for people that are into natural medicine is an incredibly well-used product, and it has some amazing properties. So let's get into it. Where do you guys want to start? I mean, can we talk maybe about the history? Who started this whole thing? Who started
Yeah.
using
That's a great
reishi?
history of
Where does
Well,
it come from
I've
originally?
got a bit of history. So it comes obviously from Asia. It's been used, and funnily enough, like the mushroom appears in a lot of Chinese paintings and things like that. It was apparently used by royalty, which is why it only actually surfaced in the Chinese pharmacopoeia in the year 2000 for the first time, because it wasn't really used by
Out.
No.
2000.
So even though Asian practitioners have been using it for hundreds of years, it was considered to be a very kind of special plant that only royals were using because of its scarcity. Because apparently, and it's not even in the Japanese pharmacopoeia. It's
Wow.
not even listed there.
Well, I can use it because I'm from a royal priesthood. But anyway, go on.
Well, so apparently it grows on the peony tree. And I think it says, I had some like really interesting statistics on it. So on a peony tree, I think it's only like 10,000 trees, and it only grows on 3% of these trees.
What peony trees? Is that right?
Another
Oh,
immune
yeah,
thing,
that's
yeah.
according to what I
Isn't that
Isn't it amazing?
Yeah, because
So-
there's so many traditional Chinese medicine that is blah blah and peony. You know, they often combine the herbs with peony, and then to find out that peony trees are like
My understanding is
grow the plants out of it. That's kind of cool.
It's like almost like a fan, is that right? And it sort of grows on the side of.
Yeah,
Is
on
that
the
right?
bark.
Picture here, if
Yeah.
you want to get the cameraman to.
It's not a
It's
colour
black and
picture,
white.
Yeah,
but
So it's a doctrine of signatures on
You know-
that. Lungs and kidneys.
You know,
and
we
it looks
are
a bit
in
like it.
It's actually
2020.
different.
We can have colour photos. We're allowed colour
well,
photos.
I've got a black and white printer, so apologies for
Well,
that.
I've got a great colour photo here of the entire
I've got a
immune
dot
system,
matrix.
and this is where reishi works through this guy. This whole page, it helps upregulate and downregulate a whole lot of this area. It regulates the entire immune system, which I think is incredible.
So
Wow.
we're going to get into some pretty technical kind of
Yeah.
words and stuff.
No, don't
I
worry,
just
I'm
wanna
here to
take
break it down.
If I can just take a step back, and with reishi, it's been used for so many things. And even though it's a relatively new addition to the pharmacopoeias and that sort of stuff, the amount of science behind it is amazing. Lots and lots of data. It's one of the most well-researched of all the herbal medicines, even looking at drug interactions and everything like that. So as a naturopath, it's an extremely valuable tool because we have a good understanding of how it interacts with chemotherapeutics and other drugs and everything like that, with lots of data that you can send back to your doctors and oncologists about working with them to use this particular herb as part of your medical protocol and that sort of stuff. It's a great opportunity for naturopaths, doctors and everyone to work together because we've got a really good science and we can share the same language. But what's cool about natural medicine compared to orthodox medicine is where mainstream medicine or orthodox stuff is designed, or pharmaceuticals I should say, is designed to hit a target or to force a particular change. Herbs have this wicked ability to adapt to what state that they're used in. Now, what I loved about reishi, and there's a lot of viruses and a lot of immune conditions that we get, that the actual virus itself, the way it survives and the way it thrives is by just screwing with our immune system. You know, like telling our immune system there's no viruses here, just focus on allergies and that sort of stuff by manipulating the chemicals that are released. Reishi has this wicked ability to go in and just, when we refer to the immune system being like a seesaw, where one side kills infections, one side flushes allergies and parasites, and then the fulcrum that regulates it would be oral tolerance and that sort of stuff. when we look at that, reishi has this wicked ability to manipulate the seesaw regardless of the direction of change to normalise that function, meaning there's been a virus in there that's suppressed your T helper 1 immunity, which is your antimicrobial, and upregulated your anti-allergic inflammation. Reishi can come in and switch that off. But then when it keeps going too far and we start to get into a hyper-inflammatory or a hyper-reactive state where the immune system starts doing more damage than the infection, it can actually start to calm it back down. And that's where I find reishi is absolutely fascinating. And to explain how it does that, we've got these amazing coloured diagrams with wicked words all over them. But, I mean, that's what my personal opinion is. That's why I found reishi so valuable in the naturopathic clinic, and that's why you'll find it used really smart, and it's really well known. And when it has that ability to manipulate the immune system in response to a viral or a bacterial load, as opposed to other mushrooms or herbs that have a specific function or a drug that just drives things in a particular way, it's an amazing tool.
Oh, I absolutely. I haven't studied it like you guys have, and I haven't used it in practice. And that is probably why I love talking to you guys, because you guys have actually used this with people and actually seen the results. You've used it in clinic. But I geek out on this stuff. I mean, again, I just love Mother Nature. I love the way that nature knows best, and how these things often, almost always, never have any negative side effects if used in the right ratios and used smart. I mean, again, like anything, as Matt says, it's not a straight curve. There's always a bell curve, but it's just such a crazy product. Have you got any, or are we allowed to talk about any clinic data where you've actually used it with somebody, where you've actually seen something? Are we allowed to talk about that?
Well, I don't know, but
Not
I can
about
talk
products,
about,
but
I'm
we
not
can
going to
talk
talk about a
about
person and that sort of stuff, but on a general pattern. See, a lot of my clinical experience was in North Queensland. We had a lot of Ross River virus, glandular fever, dengue fevers, a lot of these weird-ass viruses and that sort of stuff. It was the best thing I could use for those sort of things, because what I found is a lot of those, especially things like glandular fevers and those sort of things, they live inside your immune cells happily. And they confuse your immune system, and they tell your immune system there's no viruses here, so they stop the antiviral defense. And reishi, you can come in, just add it into those sort of cases, and significant improvement across not only their symptom picture, but totally changes the prognosis of the condition. You know?
Wow, that's awesome.
So even me myself, I mean, I've tested positive for most of those mosquito-borne bloody things. I had no idea. I was looking for something totally different in the blood test. They come back and said, you probably should be feeling a lot more dead than you are. But reishi is something that we've incorporated into our diet. Reishi is beautiful, savoury flavouring. It tastes like beef stock. It's really, really nice. Okay. So, and the therapeutic doses around that top of the bell curve, we're sitting around 6 grams as like the therapeutic sort of dose. So when you buy pure powdered reishi, like you're adding a teaspoon into it. I mean, we add it into shepherd's pie and spaghetti, everything, and my kids love it. It actually goes really well with cocos in chocolates and that sort of stuff as well. It's actually a very interesting flavour profile that makes it useful for so many different things. Otherwise, you get 10 or 20 to 1 extracts, looking at about 150 milligrams of those sort of extracts. Again, dosing it up to get around to that 6 grams of a fresh herb. That's the areas that you're looking for. So the dose range is okay, you know, like it's not something you couldn't possibly do as part of your diet.
No, and look, and that's the beautiful thing about the apothecaries, I guess, if you like, of the days of old, that actually looked at these things and were using dried herbs and crushing them up and effectively extracting them way back within. I think a lot of people, and look, modern science is fantastic, and that's what ATP science stands for, is looking at obviously the traditional with the new, and then obviously working out how we can use modern science, modern techniques with traditional time-tested, you know, remedies that have been used, and the study and the information of those things. But sorry, you were going to say?
I was just going to say, and a lot of the studies also, you know, some studies will be focused on the mycelium of the mushroom, some of them will be on the spores of the mushroom. So they all can have like slightly different functions. They all have the triterpenoids and the polysaccharides as the main active ingredients, but there's over like 400 active constituents in reishi.
Wow.
Those are the two main ones that have been studied really well. And so some of them will use the fruit body. Now the fruit body is mainly what they make the herbal extracts from, and the fruit body just means it's the whole mushroom.
Right. Yeah.
And the mycelium is the root of the mushroom, and then the spores is like the little seeds of the mushroom.
Yeah, right.
So I think the spores were shown to kind of suppress T cell function, and then the mycelium and the fruit body increases T cell.
Crazy.
So
depending on what you need, you can use the different part of the plant.
And the beautiful thing about reishi, another thing I love about it is, let's say you want to boost someone's immune system, that's great, they're sick, whatever. But what if they've got an autoimmune disease?
Yeah.
And you give them this and it helps them. So it has a wonderful way of regulating the immune system. That's what I love about it.
How does it do it? Can you give us a bit of indication of how it works?
It's to do with the different parts about it. Now, the polysaccharide part enhances T helper 1. Yet the
don't let me forget to talk about polysaccharides and bloody FODMAP.
Oh yeah.
I can't every time I mention something, there was a phase. Everybody sees reishi, no worries, and then everyone's getting great results, and then everyone's like, I can't, I'm FODMAP'd.
Yeah.
Or I've got candida and I can't have mushrooms.
Yeah.
So.
And then there's other parts that increase interleukin 17, which drive up T helper 17.
Increases which? Sorry, Steve.
Interleukin 17. It's another chemical messenger.
Sorry, I didn't hear what you had said. Yep.
Which drives up T helper 17, and that has another positive or negative effect inside the gut too.
Yeah.
And that's why it has such a wonderful effect on the whole body. So it's the different parts of the plant, but the beautiful thing is giving the whole plant seems to have this amazing regulatory body where the body picks out what it needs. And it's like any nutrient. Like if you take too much iron, your body won't absorb it unless you've got hemochromatosis. It won't absorb it. So your body has this natural way of regulating what it's taking in. It's because it's been in the body for many, many years, of course. It's not a new drug, not new to nature molecule.
So we're talking about the mucosal immunity. So what we understand is that 80% of our immune system is found around our mucosa. We get these like Peyer's patches and these section GALT and MALT, which is mucus-associated lymphoid tissue, gut-associated lymphoid tissue. That's our first-line defence. I mean, our skin's 2 square meters, our gut wall's 400 square meters. So that's where things are coming across, and that's where reishi interacts with the dendritic cells and these what they're called antigen-presenting cells, and they're the guys that will find the bacteria and the virus, engulf it, rip it into bits, and then show their mates and say, go look for this.
Yeah.
And reishi goes through and regulates with the at the top of the army, the generals of the army. So we've got these naive immune cells come up going, I had no idea what I'm doing, I'm an idiot. What do I look for? The reishi goes, well, I ripped this thing up before, go find that, and here's a heap of chemicals that will help you find it,
Yeah.
That's where reishi comes in. It can really screw around with things that come into our body and have adapted mechanisms to survive within our tissue, through those sort of things, and reishi can really screw with them.
I love it. I love reishi because of that, and you probably use it in clinic a lot too. Reishi,
definitely, and like Matt with viral conditions, Epstein-Barr virus and CMV and all of those kinds of viruses. It's my go-to. I'll sometimes mix it with a few other herbs, like licorice. I like to mix it with.
It goes brilliant with licorice.
Why licorice?
Well, licorice has got a lot of its other immune mediating effects. Licorice, if you look at like a lot of conditions that we use things like prednisone or cortisones and that sort of stuff to suppress the immune system's overreaction, licorice can kind of have that similar effect. It increases the half-life of cortisols and that sort of stuff, so we get more of those anti-inflammatory immune modulating effects. Plus, they kind of work beautifully together on the ACE, because you got reishi as an ACE inhibitor.
That's
and that
right.
lowers blood pressure. Licorice aggravates it and it can increase blood pressure. You put the two together and they just balance out nicely. That's a good combo.
But if somebody had low blood pressure, obviously licorice would be a cool thing just on its own. But you need the glycorized. I forget it. Is it
glycorized?
Yeah.
And in my clinic, we used to use a lot of licorice in the morning up until about 2 or so in the afternoon, because I tried to recreate that cortisol wave.
Nice.
So I'd use licorice for someone that's got adrenal exhaustion to actually preserve the cortisol half-life, and that way they manifest that. So someone that was crashing in the middle of the morning or lunchtime, you could extend their energy out to 2, 3, 4, 5 in the afternoon by using licorice in the morning to make that cortisol stay relatively high, and also works on the autoimmunity.
What else can reishi be used with? What's another good partner in crime, if you like?
Cordyceps is another really good one.
You know what? I'm fascinated by cordyceps.
Cordyceps is so dodgy, though. Really? Yes, and it is, and I'll tell you exactly why. Cordyceps, wild-crafted cordyceps, is supposed to be a mushroom that grows inside an insect.
Yeah.
It's like a vampire thing. It grows inside these things.
Weird
So
looking.
depending on the host and the soil is what properties that cordyceps will have.
That's interesting.
So they're all variations. So you can have some in a scorpion, some in a spider, some in a caterpillar. They got different actions. Cordyceps militaris, however, where a lot of the research was done, they actually, instead of having wild-crafted cordyceps found in the hosts, that a variation across where it was found and who found it and whether they filled it up with a wire stick or something. Oh, there's a lot of dodgy stuff with cordyceps,
weird
counterfeit stuff. Just Google image cordyceps if you want to see this
I think I'm
bizarre,
gonna do that.
It's the most
freaky.
bizarre
Oh man, you
thing.
should see it. There's these freaky mushroom, like be like a
scary.
scorpion thing, and
Yeah.
it's badass. Next thing you know, this cannibal mushroom grows out of the thing, and it turns into like this freak, and then it feeds on this killing insect, and then makes a beautiful medicine.
But
depending on
you're
the
making
host,
me want to take it.
yeah. So Cordyceps militaris, there's a lot of research on the militaris one because what they did is they took away the randomness of the hosts and created a mishmash of rye and rice and other little substrates so they could make cordyceps consistent. And then so Cordyceps militaris has a totally different profile effect to other cordyceps. So if you get wild-crafted or natural cordyceps, you don't really know what you're getting. If you're getting Cordyceps militaris, you're getting something consistent, but it's not natural cordyceps.
Yeah.
The magic about cordyceps, the thing I love the most, is I can just imagine there would have been an era and a point in time where people were going, now you need to find a vampire scorpion to cure your condition. You're going to need a vampire caterpillar, But man, definitely, anyone out there, Google it. It is such a weird bloody thing. Cordyceps militaris, we have consistent action, but if you read research on a study done on a particular cordyceps, you can't necessarily take that data and then use a different cordyceps and expect the same results because it might be a different host animal.
So do you like it or not?
I love it.
Okay.
I don't know what the hell it is. I just said it was weird.
So obviously you like it.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Like it's got apparently used with reishi. It's got really good lung protective effects.
That's interesting.
Astragalus, incidentally, is another herb that I think goes very well with reishi.
Astragalus,
Yeah,
that's a
absolutely.
favourite of yours, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it is. And astragalus for me, I always do like prevention and convalescence and just general tonic, but I always remove it during an acute infection. And that was basically just on traditional Chinese medicine belief that such things as astragalus and even other things like Pennex ginseng will tonify a virus.
Right.
If you've got an acute infection, you take them out, use them for prevention and recovery.
Okay. As far as research that's been done on it, because I know that you're the sort of do a lot of the research on that.
Yeah,
how many? I mean, like I know Matt. Sometimes you put stuff into PubMed, and people are going, "Oh, there's no research on it." You're like, there's 14,000 papers on here.
I get that every week.
I mean, and you're saying obviously that as far as China is concerned, it's only really appeared since 2000, so it's only 20 years.
There's tons of research.
I mean, in
I've got
terms
a
of
whole long
research,
list of research papers.
We're going to PubMed. Where are we going looking for this sort of stuff?
Well, I did a search and I found some information on, and I found a paper on it. I went, oh, this is good. This will be a good, nice review. 132-page review on Ganoderma and all its effects throughout the body. Now, I printed off
300-page book as
Oh, yeah,
well.
that's a 300-page book.
Wow.
And this is chapter 1 of it, just on the immune system. If you can see my dodgy stapling, it was too fat to staple. That's how much information, and that was just chapter 1.
Wow.
That's just on the immune system, which is what we're doing. If we could do a podcast on reishi and how good it is for the liver and kidneys and all this, it
you
goes
just
on
break
forever.
it down into each
Yeah.
individual
Yeah,
one.
there were so many
Anti-aging.
chapters on anti-aging, all sorts of other diseases we can't even talk about. You know, there was it just went on and on forever.
No.
It was 300 odd pages, and I sent it to these guys thinking, oh, geez, 9 megabytes, big file, and it was just loads of information. I couldn't believe it.
And this is what we're saying as well too. We don't want you just to take our word for it. I mean, appreciate we've got a lot of people who love natural medicine and love nature and love what's been provided. But do your own research into it. I mean, there's plenty of opportunity to look into PubMed and to other medical journals. I'm not sure if you can recommend any others, Steve or Matt or Elizma.
Most of them are on the PubMed.
That's the idea of it.
Most of them are there.
the published stuff.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I mean, even Google Scholar, you'll find stuff, but I double check a lot of the Google Scholar stuff. I go back and see where it's published, peer reviewed, and that sort of stuff.
Journals they were like published.
And I know, Matt, you've said before as well too, you do have to be careful because a lot of companies now have recognised that the lay public are researching PubMed and they're putting effectively brochures in there. So, you know, peer reviewed is always really good. And in anything where they've got, you know, clinical or university trials, especially anything revolving around blind placebos are fantastic as well too. So not all studies and papers are created equal, and I think that can be where you can get you know, arguments as well too, going, oh well, this paper said this and this paper said that. So again, you have to even question the papers that you're reading as well too to determine. And what I said before stands. You guys have used it in clinic, you've seen it in the real world how it's worked, and that's what gives you guys so much authority on it.
But also a reminder that we have to look at when we read studies is what was the studies done on, because some studies are done on, you know, you read and you think, oh, this is great, and then you read it's a plant study.
Where you guys collectively, I've worked out, have probably got something like 70 years of clinical experience treating
Steve alone.
Everyone, Steve alone. Steve's actually 120. He's old, so old. But I mean, in terms of, and this is the thing as well too, who are you listening to? What agenda do they have? And the guys, as far as
did you follow the links and actually see if it said what the
what they said? I've got a real bee in my bonnet about misinformation and about taking the high road at the moment. So look into the people's whose advice that you're taking. But that's the thing, I think, in terms of obviously where you source your information from as well too. As I'm saying to everybody now, question everything, look into it, and don't just take someone else's opinion of what is said. Actually, and this is what I find a lot of people do. You open people's mind up into looking at things and researching things. The first thing that they did is happened to one of Tony's friends. She was trying to explain something to her. The first thing she did was Google it and look at somebody else's opinion of that. So instead of, and they go, oh, well, it's been debunked. I hate that word. Really? So do you believe that? What I'm trying to say is, though, is that everybody, they go, oh, that's been proven false. Why? Because Snopes said it. Okay. So can we maybe look a little bit deeper into that? I mean, and I'm not saying that everything that they're saying is not true, but I'm just saying is that this is what happens. People go to an authority and they go absolutely no further. They don't verify, they don't cross-reference, and they don't cross-check. We're saying,
but the same all people the time, won't believe Wikipedia or something because it's not. Oh, it's Wikipedia. I wouldn't believe what Wikipedia says, but Snopes said it's false.
Well, I mean, Wikipedia is definitely open to manipulation as well too. And the thing is, you've got to dig deep and you've got to do your own research. If you can't be bothered, just admit it. But don't go, oh well, one authority said. Cross-reference, look deep. What's the motive? What's the understanding? It's really fascinating.
And read it and read the articles. A good example, like scientific Chinese whispers create so much wasted time and distraction. Eric Rolson from the ISSN, he believes that he is to blame for the reputation of creatine causing cramps because no one ever talked about it really. He was racking his brain with all of his mates of ways of doing a study to prove the safety of creatine. Within that study, he said creatine may cause cramps. He went on to proceed to prove that it doesn't. However, all the references of whenever someone wants to say creatine causes cramps and reference that, they reference his paper because the only quote, the only phrase that they could find anywhere that says creatine may cause cramps was the guy that proved that it doesn't. But they still take the reference and quote it. Read the paper.
I remember this abstract scientist. Literally, everything he was doing was an abstract. Accused Matt of being an abstract. It's like, because you probably don't have the ability to...
Facebook.
Yeah, no.
I was playing with my kids in the backyard and I got caught up in some people getting me in arguments and then tagging me into it. And then I'm sitting there on my weekend trying to help these people do this stuff. And then I end up snapping at my kid because he was just pulling on my arm, distracting me while I was trying to... wanting to play with somebody on my weekend with him, and I'm sitting there. No, I got to, and I snapped at him, and just going, "Oh man, that bang!" Deleted Facebook from that moment, and I never went back onto it.
Mate, you can't win an argument with
Facebook.
You can't win an argument. You cannot reason with unreasonable people. So just move on. And again, if you live your entire life to win an argument, as who's the guy from Win Friends and Influence, Dark Carnegie said, you can't, because even if you win the argument, they'll be so pissed off with you that they'll just speak crap about you and lie about you anyway because they want to save face. The only way that you can win a genuine argument is if there's actually a mutual respect to begin with. So,
absolutely.
Anyway.
I mean, look at something like Ganoderma. and we're talking about these references, there is so much information. I mean, there's a 300-page book that just summarises the science alone that you can go to. We've got bucket loads of data. We've got heaps of papers like this with a herb drug. I just vandalised his tooth. But that was kind of funny because I was a bit bored. And these people go and put the photos of themselves before the papers. It's like, oh, my gosh. Anyway.
We love that.
So
I'm going to do
it's
that.
very well referenced herb. It's lots of cool data. What I love about it is naturopaths, doctors, oncologists, pharmacists, together we can all share a particular language and understand how this works and fit it into a protocol. Before we move on too much, I want to quickly, because in my naturopath clinic, it really bugged me that these people were getting great results from reishi and fixing the mucosal immunity and all that sort of stuff. And then all of a sudden, they all come back to me and said, I can't use that reishi because it's going to be bad for my guts because I've now been told I'm FODMAP and I've got to avoid FODMAPs, which is fructo, oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides.
Yep.
What's the
And,
A?
I think.
What?
And.
And what?
Oh, sometimes I don't say and, sometimes I go,
So it's a
and
carbohydrate
then
intolerance in the small
polysaccharides.
intestine.
Okay, right.
And
It's so funny.
polysaccharides. So all of these health benefits of the polysaccharides, regulating the mucosal immunity, regulating inflammation. Why would polysaccharides be bad in... I mean, what? So a polysaccharide's a long sugar chain. So the FODMAP scenario is that we're talking about an overgrowth of bacteria into our small intestine, and they will feed on sugars. But these sugars manipulate the mucosal immunity. I mean, should people that are on a FODMAP diet avoid reishi? Will it make them worse, or is it? Does anyone know?
I've not seen that in my clinic, to be quite honest.
I have never seen any of that, because what you got to realise, a lot of the medicinal herbs and that sort of stuff that we have, the active ingredient are polysaccharides, and it's through the polysaccharides that work. So in my understanding too is if you've got a lot of sugar feeding these bacteria, polysaccharides resemble a sugar, but they may be a poison to certain things. So by taking away the sucrose, taking away the lactose, taking away those other forms of disaccharides and that sort of stuff, replacing it with a polysaccharide, because a lot of modbiotic compounds are polysaccharides as well. So replacing those polysaccharides, the long sugar chains from starch and sugar, it's very different. The polysaccharides that are found within these herbal remedies is very different to eating lactose, starch, and everything else. So if you remove those sugars, these bugs are going to be craving those sugars. They're going to be looking for them. That's how these herbs often work. You take away the other sugar, these sugars come through, and it actually kills the bug, modifies the bug, manipulates the immune system and responds to it. So I don't think anyone, this is my personal opinion as a naturopath, if you come to me as a naturopath, which you can't because I don't do that anymore, but if you did, and you said I'm on a FODMAP diet, I'd still say use this. What do you guys, would you agree or like...
No, I definitely agree.
Because I've just never seen it create any sort of bloating. And it's similar to what you were saying before about the candida. Like there was this school of thought that, see, candida's a fungal infection. That's a fungal infection of a tree.
Yeah.
As a fungus.
Like trees like?
Was that? Yeah, well, these fungi kill other fungi. But there's this whole school of thought with naturopaths putting out diets saying if you've got a fungal infection, you can't eat fungi.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not the sharpest tool here. You can disagree at any time.
Oh, no, we're fine. No, we just...
But even I understand that.
Yeah,
So I'm you know what, I am open for no, I'm not. I'm open for consults. You get the wildest. Yes.
No,
you won't just come and ask us to research it for you.
Oh, Jeff will look after you.
Yeah.
I know nothing. Yes. So, but that's stupid.
Yeah, that is. And so you don't have to avoid fungal for fungi, and you don't have to avoid yeast for yeast.
No, because you're not going to get a reishi overgrowth. I mean,
It's not the
candida is a
same
different
fungus.
fungus.
It's just
Right.
funnily. Now, can I ask another question
You're a
across
fun-
the panel?
Yeah, you're a
Yeah.
fun guy.
Whenever someone says, now you said it at the start of the podcast, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it since, but whenever you guys hear someone say funnily, do you picture a funnel?
No.
Funnily? Who
Yeah,
said funnily?
you said funnily.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, you said funnily. And from that moment on, I've been stuck imagining a funnel. Does anyone else do that?
No.
No.
Nah.
No. When I think of a fun guy, I think of you, Matt.
I think of a mushroom. It's all gone a bit awkward.
Somewhere in the background, a dog barks.
And then a baby cried in the ghetto. Anyway, what are we doing? Someone else say something amazing.
PLA2?
So, Reishi, let's talk about another mechanism of Reishi being fucking amazing.
What about this
Quickly.
PLA2 stuff? I mean, isn't that a test to measure if you're getting heart disease, or what else is it?
There is, yeah. So PLA2, for those of you who don't know, PLA2 stands for phospholipase A2
That's it.
enzyme.
I
Just
knew that.
A2
I knew
enzyme.
that.
No, it's just A.
Oh.
Yeah,
Sorry,
just
boring
A2,
one.
and it's a kind of like a lipolytic enzyme, which means it kind of can break down fatty, I guess structures, etc. Now Reishi is a PLA2 inhibitor. Now the reason why that's important is because viruses either have their own PLA2 enzymes, and the coronavirus specifically can hijack our own PLA2 enzymes.
Why?
And I think
What's it do?
Is that all coronaviruses or just this novel one?
no, coronavirus in general,
In
which
general.
will include, SARS and MERS
Yep.
and a few others there
Yep.
as well.
Yep.
Now, the reason why that's important, because this is one of the ways that viruses can kind of replicate. Because what they do is like this PLA2 enzyme, because all our cells in our body has a cell membrane. So it's like a fatty membrane around the cell made up of phospholipids, arachidonic acid, omega-3, omega-6, and glycerol and things like that. And that's what protects the cell from the outside. It keeps the insides of the cell in and the outside of the environment out of the cell. Now, these PLA2 enzymes can start to, it actually breaks, I believe, the second bond between the fatty acid and the glycerol on the phospholipid membrane. So it starts to break that bond. And then that allows for the virus to kind of like restructure it. Well, it does actually two things. Like as soon as that bond's broken by PLA2, a disproportionate number of arachidonic acid is released from the cell membrane, which is very inflammatory. And so that inflammation can then create like toxic lipids. I think they call them, over down here, lysolethins or something like that. And they found that the amount of lysolethins, which is these toxic kind of fats, is kind of like correlated to viral replication. So the more of these fats there were, the more the virus was able to replicate. So there's a kind of a correlation between it. And the reason how that works is like once the virus inside the cell, it's kind of disrupted the cell membrane. It actually, the virus needs to kind of change the membrane inside the cell for its own replication purposes. So what it does is, I'm not quite sure if it attaches to it, but it forms these like membrane organelles and vacuoles. So it actually starts to change the cell membrane on the inside. And one of those areas is on the endoplasmic reticulum. So inside the cell, you have a mitochondria, you have the nucleus, and you have a Golgi apparatus, and you have an endoplasmic reticulum. So it kind of attaches from like a cellular membrane structure on this endoplasmic reticulum, and this is how it replicates, because the endoplasmic reticulum in our own cells is needed to make proteins, to transport proteins. That's pretty much how our body makes RNA and all
new
that
cells
kind of stuff.
and protein synthesis and grow. Basically,
right.
that's our mechanism for our cells to grow.
And these are
so
RNA
it hijacks
positive.
that.
Yeah, these are RNA
That's
positive
cool.
viruses. So
Yeah.
it hijacks that, and that's how it replicates, and that's how it spreads. So Reishi is like a PLA2 inhibitor. So it can actually, theoretically, really reduce the viral replication and thus the viral load of viruses like the coronavirus.
So
which I
what did you
thought was
say
really
it
interesting.
did to the cell membrane? Did you say it makes the cell membrane more permeable to allow tissue entry and
So
that
I
sort of
think
stuff?
it obviously anything like a PLA2 enzyme will make the cell membrane more permeable, but then it also, I guess, it liberates some of those components of the cell membrane that it then uses to kind of make these kind of membrane pockets, like vacuoles that can then attach to the endoplasmic reticulum, and then it kind of sets off this whole process.
Yeah, wow.
But the interesting thing we also have to remember is even things like lipopolysaccharides, which is from gram-negative bacteria, also can induce PLA2 enzyme function. So it made me think, right, okay, so you're talking about comorbidities and like worst case scenario, and I thought, well, in this case, if someone got a virus like this and they also had bacterial gram-negative bacteria, as an example, like Klebsiella, Streptococcus, what have you. That's like a kind of a double whammy with that PLA2 kind of enzyme mechanism. That's just my theory, of course.
No, but it makes a lot of sense. I mean, because if you look at lipopolysaccharide, and for the listeners out there, that good or bad bugs, the cell membrane, it makes lipopolysaccharide. So you got dysbiosis. We talked about people avoiding it for the FODMAP. But what a FODMAP is an overgrowth of bacteria. Now, we've got 10 times as many bugs in our guts as we have whole cells of our whole body. They are a source of lipopolysaccharide. I mean, that's dust, for example, is a lot of that. That's broken bacterial fragments and that sort of stuff. In the studies with lipopolysaccharide, if you bathe the sympathetic nervous system with it, you can trigger anxiety. If you put it into a joint, you can create arthritis. If it exposes to a membrane, it creates inflammation. So if people that have got an overgrowth of bugs or people that are in an immune process of killing off a lot of stuff will actually liberate a lot of lipopolysaccharide. You combine that with a viral load, and that's how we can get a lot of these problems. And you're saying that reishi, if nothing else, it might come through and regulate the way the lipopolysaccharide damages cell membranes and it makes the disease process worse.
Is there anything else? Because I want to wrap it up.
Well, that's a real cool one because and this is for another podcast, but reishi is great for reducing cholesterol and dyslipidemia and all that as well.
I'm interested.
It's a 300 bloody page book.
Yeah, I only read it all. No, I didn't.
I was going to ask you, in terms of the impact on cholesterol, could you combine it with something like pomegranate? Like
absolutely.
Globe artichoke, berberine herbs, all those.
All aspects of aging are inflammatory. And the basic thing is if it help regulate our mucosal immunity, it can help regulate against the changes from lipopolysaccharide. That is a massive inflammatory load within our body alone. I mean, people avoid meat to avoid arachidonic acid. So we're talking about just regulating the inflammatory process at our mucosa to stop the exposure to arachidonic acid as sources of inflammation. We know, I mean, there's even a Time magazine that said inflammation was the silent killer.
Silent killer. Yeah. Picture of flames on the cover. It was quite dramatic.
It was exciting, wasn't it?
Yeah, I liked it.
Like, ooh,
I remember that. That was back in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, I did a top talk for doctors 15 years ago called Inflammaging, I remember.
Yeah. But the benefit of the natural stuff is it protects the mucosa from damage. Now, as opposed to a lot of pharmaceutical anti-inflammatories that might work on the mechanism of inflammation that is affecting the joints and reduce the pain or something like that, but the side effect is actually damage to the gut wall, which is a major site of inflammation. So that's where I love the natural stuff, because a classical anti-inflammatory action should basically be soothing to wherever it touches. You know, like not irritating and drying in one area and then anti-inflammatory somewhere else, you know.
John is an anti-inflammatory.
Pro-inflammatory?
Pro-inflammatory, that's right, mate. Yeah. Okay, so anything else, guys?
Oh, I think that covers it. It's just a wonderful immune. Can I use the word tonic? It's a bit blasé, but it's a wonderful herb.
It's a bloody lovely herb. You can add it to your food. You can work with your oncologists, doctors and pharmacists. You can use it in the high-end level of medicine with your naturopath and doctor's support and pharmacist permission or whatever we're supposed to say with all that.
Yep.
Work as a team at that high end. Reishi has the ability to be used in soups and stews as part of your diet. It's fine. It goes really well with teas. Tastes nice. You can use it safely across just as part of your diet, but then you can go to that really high end working with proper pharmaceutical prescriptions along with your healthcare team to create really high end therapy out of it. So it's one of those most amazing herbs. And then anyone else that it's very good for prevention. So you can use it for prevention, you can use it for chronic conditions, and you can also use it within acute condition. So you don't have to be too clever basically with reishi. You can use it for overactive immune system, underactive immune system, allergies, intolerances, parasites, fungus, mold. There's so many applications for it that I recommend most people just add it into their diet one way or the other. Or both.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, always.
In terms of essential, herbs and things that would be in your top 5?
Yeah, definitely.
Top 5?
I've got it at home in herbal liquid, even just for me and my family.
Wow.
So
yeah. You're one of my number ones.
I'd say it's your number one.
I got lots of number ones with my favourites.
Yeah.
But I put that like reishi, turmeric. There's so many. There's so many. I can only think of 2.
Well, I literally take reishi every day.
Funnily.
So funnily enough.
Yeah, funnily enough.
I love the mushroom as well. Like Matt said, it tastes. Yeah, it tastes really good.
It's nice, man.
Yeah.
I love it. It's really good savoury stock.
Anyway, that's enough from us. We'll be back with more Herbs as Heroes podcast down the track. I think we're going to do 5. So,
so
we are going to do.
I've listed 2 so far.
Turmeric.
Turmeric.
I don't know. But yeah, there's some other ones we're going to do as well too. And if you'd like to hear, on herbs that you'd like to hear about, write in, let us know.
Let us know.
If you guys want us to do a summary on a whole heap of them, we'll take your emails and your get in contact with us on Facebook is probably the best thing, I think, on social media.
We should do your 5 favourite herbs. We should also do controversial herbs. We should really delve into, because there is more questions around the controversial herbs. Things like ashwagandha, hypericums, and those sort of things. There's so much data on them, and they're a little bit. There's an interesting story about how to use them and when they should be used and shouldn't be used, and that sort of stuff. So that's fun too, man.
Well, it's like those things, anti-aging, curious herbs.
Or herbs we're curious about. I don't know. I can't imagine a herb going, I wonder.
Could be a curious coleus.
Funnily enough.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's have a look at that, and we'll break it down. All right. Well, guys, thanks very much.
Good. No, thank you, Jeff.
You can cut that part.
Now
It is good. No. Okay, sorry. Okay, you can cut that. Welcome to the ATP podcast. You're with your hosts, Matt, Jeff, and I've stuffed it. It's not even a podcast. Okay, you ready?
Project.
I know.